The infinite possibilities of particle physics. Okay, it's so important that particle physics and electrodynamics work together. This scooter is designed by electrodynamicists, we'll call them, right? That's my understanding. Electrical engineers that study electrodynamics. Particle physics is the way the universe works. This scooter is created. This scooter exists in a universe, and is sustained by a universe, right? Why can't I put my hand through it right now? That's particle physics, right? That's a circuit. That's the universe's circuit. Why can't my hand fall through this? This is mostly empty space, right? 99.99% empty space. Why isn't my hand going through it? Particle physics. To ignore particle physics and to speak as if electrodynamics, which is the way the scooter's wired, is the only and final truth, the only truth and the final truth, is vastly limiting our ability to learn and create more efficient circuits. We exist in a universe. It's important to recognize that. Ignoring that we exist in an energy-rich universe is really to ignore our existence. And that, we can do that, but can we? I can't do that. Okay, let me think for a second. I was gonna go somewhere with this video, and I lost my train of thought. Let me think about what I was gonna say. I think I just wanted to say that we exist in a universe that's energy rich, right? Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner, said this: there's enough energy in a teacup to boil all the Earth's oceans. Just the space in a teacup, that space, right there, in an actual cup. Not outer space, not in the planet, just everywhere throughout the universe, including the space inside the teacup, right? We can go further by saying the space that the teacup occupies, just the space of the teacup itself, that the material of the teacup, the space of the teacup where the material exists, we think of as material, right? That space can also boil all the Earth's oceans. So there's a lot of energy in space, and that energy powers our circuits. Our circuits interact with the zero-point field. Our circuits interact with the energy-rich space. I know what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to talk about hydrogen for a second. I was in my research and studies. Okay, so people say that the really, really great inventions, the really, really super great ones, are never talked about. Like, there's some really simple, great ones, right? We don't hear about them. But if you keep researching, like my teachers all told me the same thing. They said, read everything, right? Why did they say that? Why do they keep saying read everything? They want me to know about the world I live in, right? So I always read every different point of view and aspect in science and possibilities and particle physics, doing my best to grasp the imagery of what is being shared with me. Well, one of the things I came across was there's a way of making hydrogen with magnets that, and I don't even know how to talk about it, but it has something, I feel like it has something to do with what Thomas Bearden was talking about when he talks about the dipole or the separation of charge, and also what Donald Lee Smith talks about, which is, and that book is a really good book to get that Rick Friedrich put together. Last I checked, it was available on Amazon, or I think you can also buy it through Rick Friedrich's website directly at I think it's r-charge.com. But go to Rick Friedrich YouTube channel, R-I-C-K, I think, and then Friedrich is F-R-I-E-D-R-I-T-C-H, I think. I'm not certain of the spelling, but Rick Friedrich, and he has a YouTube channel. If you read that book, it's very helpful. And Donald Lee Smith, spent his life committed to learning how to extract energy from magnets. That's one of the things he was working on. And one of my favorite inventions that he worked with was called a rotating separator coil. But Don Smith also said that we can have a magnet, right? Because a magnet's interacting with that zero-point field, right, at all times. We can have a magnet, and that magnet can do work for us just sitting there. We can extract energy from it. Now we have to use our imaginations in collaboration to think about how that can be done, right? Because, you know, Don Smith said we want to know what frequency the magnet is how do I say this? I don't know if it's the frequency the magnet was made at or the frequency the magnet is pulsating at. Like, right, is there a frequency to a magnet? Does a magnet have a frequency? And how could we find out what that frequency is? But how can we also just interact with that field around there, right? Not just the metal, but the area around that magnet to make hydrogen, for example, right? Why does magnets increase the efficiency of hydrogen fuel cells? I've seen some experiments on YouTube where people are putting magnets on their fuel cell, right, in different configurations, but it seems like just having that magnetic field, that strong magnetic field, touching the cell or on the cell, from what I had seen, was vastly increasing the hydrogen production, the ability for the if I say it this way, for the electricity that was going into the water fuel cell, which is basically electrolysis, right? We'll just call it electrolysis. We'll just call it more efficient electrolysis, right? We think of electrolysis as being very inefficient, but there's many, many ways, especially if we take into account particle physics, there's many ways to approach the weakening of that covalent bond. Now people go, oh, there's no covalent bond, there's no covalent bond, it's not a covalent bond. I'm not going to argue or debate words and what's the right word and the wrong word. What we know is that there's hydrogen and oxygen, and there's a field that holds those together, and that field can be released, allowing us to have access to the hydrogen and to use that as a fuel, right? Because my research and study indicate that water is a fuel, right? It fuels us and it fuels vehicles. That stuff that we buy, called petrol and called gasoline, we're paying for carbon, which does not do anything for combustion or for power or for helping the vehicle move. It's only the water and fuel that we use, right? Hydrogen and oxygen. That's all that we use to move the car. So why would we pay for carbon when carbon causes harm? It's not good for us to breathe the chemicals that are in gasoline. It's not good for us to breathe that. I just made a video the other day about how there's warning signs all over the gas pump saying, like, don't breathe the fumes. Like, I can't hold my breath for like 10 minutes, so I'm kind of feel like I have to breathe the fumes a little bit, but I don't have to, because I don't have to buy fuel. I could use this electric scooter, I can use electric cars, right? And I'm interested in electric transportation, especially since in California they're outlawing the sale of new gas cars very soon. That's coming up, and I don't know if they're going to keep pushing it back, or if anything it should be pushed forward. But the way to push it forward to today is just to make the choice to buy that yourself now, right? We can just buy those now. And it would be neat to get like a Nissan Leaf and put some alternators on it. And there's been experiments where people have put alternators, car alternators, just regular alternators on electric vehicles and charge the batteries with that. I don't know exactly how to do it, but it's an exciting experiment to think about, and students have done it. And I don't know how to wire it exactly, and I know the pulleys and the ratios are important, but that's all determined in the process, right? If it's getting too hot, what's getting hot, what's causing the heat. But I know it can be done in collaboration, because the people that did these things and succeeded worked together in groups with teachers and students together, and succeeded throughout history. So it's well documented, and a lot of people talk about it and share these stories with me. They have shared these stories with me my whole life. People just love to share knowledge, and especially when it's solution-oriented, like solution-oriented worldwide collaboration, right? Like, how do we share solutions with one another, and how do we implement those solutions into our own lives, which is something that only we can figure out how to do, right? No one can tell us how to do it. Certainly if gasoline cars become illegal to be sold new, then that's like a restriction, right? So then we don't have a choice to buy a gas car anymore. But we can make the choice before we're forced to make the choice. We can just choose it ourselves, right? So investing in electric now is good. But we also need to continue investing in clean energy. I don't consider nuclear clean, because so many people have died from the accidents that have happened around the stations. And there's a lot of people, I've met a lot of people that promote it. It's their job to promote nuclear power, and they know how to talk about it in ways that feel like safe and feel good. But I never forget all the lives that have been lost, even recently. You know, every time those people say these things, there's an accident during that time period. There's still accidents, and people have told me there's no way there can be accidents anymore. But then when an accident happens, they say, oh, well, they'll give a lot of reasons for why it happened. But when I was raised, I was told those were called excuses, you know, and what I mean by that is it's like, do we have to defend something that's not necessarily a good idea, right? Just, you know, if something's very profitable, that's not a reason to continue doing it, right? If something's profitable but harmful. So I think clean energy is profitable for the planet, meaning it's good for health, it's good for life. And that's the profit that nature is concerned with, right? Because we don't pay nature money, but we can pay nature in our gratitude for giving us clean air and giving us this life we have. So we must pay that bill, which is to make responsible decisions for not just our own lives, but for the planet too, for the health of the nature of the planet and the nature of existence. It's a responsibility. We're not necessarily taught this, but we kind of are. I had many teachers in school indicating in their own ways, that there's a great importance to caring for the planet, and that was emphasized. So I definitely took note of that, and I think all the students did. We all care about where we live. It's just easy to get distracted by the next thing that we want to buy or something that we like, but we can find ways to relate to what we want in our lives that actually is building a better life for ourselves and for the planet too, the health of the planet. There's a way that we can, you know, there can be enough for everyone, right? I think that's one way of thinking about it. So I'm very interested in this way of hydrogen with magnets, and how magnetic fields can be used to separate hydrogen even without any additional input. Imagine a magnet just separating oxygen and hydrogen just by the fields, just by the presence of those fields being there, right? And I had read about this and I didn't understand it, but I think part of the reason I didn't understand it was because I'm looking at it saying, oh, but we have to put electricity into a circuit to make it do something. But I've always known, if we just look at nature, nature's always moving, everything's always happening, and we're not putting energy in. It's just like Nikola Tesla said, how do we plug into nature's wheelworks, the wheelworks of nature, right? They're always moving, the machinery of the perpetual wheelworks of nature's engines, right? The wheelworks of nature's engines, like, that's always happening. It's happened for 14 billion years. So, you know, we are certainly not creating that energy. It's energy and energy in a like a symbiotic relationship, flowing endlessly back and forth, like in the figure eight, in the infinity symbol, right? Like the electron. The electron's supposed to move in an infinity symbol, a pattern. That's what Donald Lee Smith said. And you can watch all his videos that Rick Friedrich put up, and there's copies of those videos all over the internet, duplicate copies all over the internet as well. Those are good videos to watch and to study. And Don Smith shared all that he could. He was limited by what he could say by his business agreements, and but he did say that he shared more than his business associates were comfortable with, because he felt that it was important that people knew how we can affect our world in a positive way with clean energy. And I could say that Don Smith seemed to believe, and I can see how he relates to this, that if everyone having affordable energy is kind of like a necessity for everyone. Everyone needs access to energy, because if you have access to energy, then you can have access to water, and you can have access to food. So energy, accessible energy is critically important, and that was part of the philosophy, if I understood correctly, part of the philosophy of why Don Smith was so committed to sharing what he was doing. Now, I've read on some videos, on some YouTube videos, that there's people, some very young people, that have replicated many of Don's inventions, and they're saying that when they put the schematic or diagram of how to do it in the description, that somehow that's getting deleted. They think someone's hacking into their account and deleting that. not deleting the video, but just deleting like how to do it. And I mean, I don't really know what to say about that. If that's really happening, what I would do is just make videos on the theory of what you think's taking place, but I don't know if everybody understands what's taking place. Like, maybe we could just put this part with this part with this part, and then this process happens, but we don't know the theory of what's happening. But I think talking about the theory is the very important thing to happen. On my channel, I've never had anything deleted, so I don't know why that would happen to people, and I have all kinds of videos on, water-powered engines and all kinds of things, and so I don't really know, I don't really understand that, why some, when people say that, but then they don't make any more videos about that. They can make videos about other things. So, my teachers always said never give up. And so the idea is to be creative about how you share what you're thinking about. So, maybe putting the answer out there, because I don't think I do that. I don't think I put answers to things. I think I put questions out there to share my thought process about things. And in my trying to think about things and learn about things and learn about how to think about things. Like right now, I'm not saying, oh, we can take a magnet and make hydrogen, but I'm saying I read this experiment about, and I'm showing you the parts of how I'm thinking about things. Like Don Smith said, magnets are significant, right? They're really important, and so much energy. Like some of the things that Don said, if I recall correctly, is that magnets absorb electron pairs from the sun. So the sun makes these electron pairs, releases them, and they come over here to the planet, to Earth, and magnets absorb them like a sponge. And when you extract the energy from a magnet, the magnet just automatically fills back up. It's like an endless fuel tank. And this is what Don Smith, if I understood correctly, this is what he was teaching, is he was trying to teach people, and he was trying to say this in his own way. He was trying to say that magnets have an endless supply of energy. Like one magnet has an endless supply of energy because, what did Thomas Bearden say? Because it has a plus and a minus. And what does Don Smith call that? He calls it a minus and a stronger minus, or a minus and a weaker minus. It's all minus, it's all negative, but that difference of charge, the difference between this negative and this negative, allows us to do work. And nature will make sure that it's balanced. So when you put something between those two spaces, and nature's trying to go back to balance, right? So we push nature out of balance for a moment, and nature goes right back to balance with great, great force and intensity. That's what we think of as work, where we get work. What do we want nature to do for us on its journey to return back to balance, right? So now this is just my perception of what I understood Don Smith to be sharing, but I do think it would be interesting to have on an electric scooter, even though I don't need to use water. Maybe what I can do is have on the scooter have a water tank where I can do the process of electrolysis very efficiently, where it's releasing the oxygen from hydrogen, because hydrogen would just go straight up in the air really fast, right? The hydrogen is so light, it would just go up really quick. But the oxygen, maybe this could be an oxygen maker. So I could think of my scooter, my micromobility, or my personal electric vehicle as an oxygen maker, right? I can release oxygen into the air so that my scooter's actually making oxygen instead of taking oxygen from the air and polluting it and harming it. Instead of harming the air, which harms us, I can be releasing clean, brand new oxygen from water, and then I become a contributor of the clean air. I'm literally releasing brand new fresh oxygen into the air, and that's an interesting idea. So that's something I'm thinking about as well. So let's see, it wouldn't be powered by water, but what would that be? It would be, I guess we could call it air maker or oxygen maker, making oxygen. And then I could, probably calculate how much oxygen I'm able to make in a day or while I ride the scooter. So a lot of people, a lot of students have done thought experiments with this, where the car becomes an oxygen maker instead of an oxygen taker, right? And that's what the Geet fuel processor is all about. When that system is built correctly by people that are trained to build them, you get more oxygen out of the exhaust pipe than there is in our atmosphere, right? So if we have 21, I don't remember the numbers, but let's just hypothetically say there's like 21% oxygen in the air. The Geat fuel processor, which has also been called a fuel reformer and many other words, but there's a process that takes place inside there that's not harmful to humans at all. Even though some people say, oh, it's harmful, it's harmful. People say everything's harmful. I mean, they'll say, you know, but the fact remains that the inventor Paul Pantone spent his whole life researching it and worked with scientists all around the world, and there was no harm that came to people from that system. That system was not harming people. So the Geat fuel processor is safe to use, and it's a global environmental energy technology, and it cleans the air. That system had 23% oxygen coming out of the exhaust with only like maybe a 21% oxygen in the atmosphere. It was a couple percent higher than what's in the air, so I don't remember all the numbers at the moment. I just know it was a couple percent higher. Now, how could that be? Is the oxygen coming from the water? Because the Geat fuel processor loves water, right? That's why, by many, it's called a water fuel technology. Because, I don't know if it's required to start it on a fuel like a petrol, but once it's running and heated up and at room temperature, or running at operating temperature, then it could be switched over to just because it loves hydrogen, and water has lots of hydrogen in it, right? So the Geat fuel processor loves hydrogen. So if water has lots of hydrogen, which it does, that's a great fuel. So remember that petrol and gasoline, we call it a fuel, but is it a fuel? I don't see how it is, because what we're calling a fuel is actually something that doesn't. It's carbon. The only thing that's usable inside the gasoline, petrol is the only thing usable in there is the hydrogen and the oxygen. And then what are all the other things in there that are causing harm to life and cause harm to the air and to the environment? Why would we do that to our environment, right? We don't need to do that. But we also don't need to make up stories of why we can't do something, right? We have to create stories of why we can do something and how we can do something. So that's the challenge, right? And I call it the engineer's mantra. The engineer's mantra is, there's always another way. See you soon.